Hello, welcome to Jewel School. I'm Christiane Ross, and I would like to show you something that I love doing. I love playing with wire, and I've been doing something that I kind of call sketching with wire lately. So all of these necklaces that I've made are just loops, and I'm using my hands to do it, and I'm using rather large gauge wire, which is a lot of fun. I know that I've got a lot of hand strength because I've been doing it for a while, so you can start with a larger gauge, you can go somewhere in the middle, or even this one is made with a couple of layers of 20 gauge wire. So it just makes it really easy. I like using just my hands to do it, but if you do need a pair of pliers to use, a set of your stepped looping pliers or a pair of chain nose just to grab the ends of your wire would really come in handy. So these are just a pair of your 6-step looping pliers. The wire I'm using today is, like I said, a little bit of that bigger gauge wire, which is so cool. I'm using 16 gauge artistic wire today. It has a copper core. It's silver plated on the outside, and it has a nylon coating on top of that to make it tarnish resistant. You could also, once you really get into this, use more of your precious metals like argentium, or even just a solid metal like a copper, and get some really, really cool looks. But today I'll be working with the artistic wire, and that's what these pieces are made out of, and I love it. So the 16 gauge artistic wire. Since I'm using a thicker gauge of the artistic wire, I need good cutters to start with, and so you can use sprue cutters, which are really used, they're more industrial. They're used for cutting the sprues off of rings and things like that. You can also use the Beadalon, these induction treated cutters, flush cutters. I love these guys. So I'm going to start with this, and this is the wire as it comes out of the package. It has a bit of a rough end. I'm going to cut that end off. I'll just line up my cutters. I'll put my finger over the end to keep that from flying across the studio. And there I have a nice blunt cut on the end. Now, to hide the end of that cut, I'll take my pliers and I'll grab these round nose. I don't want to use the smallest one because this is really organic and free-flowing, but I'll use the next to smallest. Now here is where you would normally readjust your grip, turn and grab, but the thing about it is, if you do that, you have the chance that you might put an indentation at the top with the top of your pliers. So I'm just going to readjust my grip on the bottom here and continue that loop. So I just have that loop. So that way I don't have a bare end sticking out of my piece anywhere. And that's all I'm going to use these pliers for. Again, if you're more comfortable using pliers with your work, feel free to do so. There's nothing wrong with that. I just know that if I'm using my hands for this, I'm not going to leave any tool marks on the metal. But you might see how to deal with that a little bit later too. So I have this long spool of wire to play with, and I discovered I really like making these solid necklaces. And so I also do bracelets with these as well. It's really free form. So what I like doing is just starting to make loops, and I'm not bending this around anything. I'm really using the tension on the wire to make a pleasing loop. And just by changing the way I hold this, I can make that loop go anywhere I want. I can push it down, so now it kind of goes in that direction, or I can flip it around, kind of make it heart shape just by pulling on the other side. So this is what I'm talking about, really making it free form and kind of, it's like feeling the wire. I love it. It's a lot of fun. And so I'm just going to continue doing that. Again, not bending it around a mandrel, not really caring how it turns out, because I'll be taking those loops and putting them on a neck mandrel a little bit later on. So this one, I'm looking at it and it's a little too bent there. I don't quite like that. So you know, I can always just go in, pull it out a little bit, roll it around, do things like that, and make it totally different. So I'm just going to play with this for a little while. I can make little loops. I can keep going and just, to my heart's content, make funky shapes, have the wire go back up toward itself. I just have so much fun sketching is kind of the way I think about it. No particular pattern in mind. And I'll keep doing this. I'll end up using the entire spool of wire, and it's just a lot of fun. And as I go, I just kind of stop and look and see, you know, where the wire is taking me. Like maybe, is that okay there? Do I need another loop? You know, just keep going. I think it looks okay because I like how that bends back over. And I get it into generally a necklace shape. So I would keep playing with this until it went down into kind of a V point and back up. And there are several things that I can do with this. So I'm going to set this aside and I'll show you some things that I've done. So with this piece that I played with, this is 10 gauge wire, so this is even bigger. If you're familiar with gauges, the smaller the number, like 8, 9, 10, those gauges are larger than the bigger numbers, say 20 gauge, 22, 24. Those are much smaller wires than, say, your 10 gauge. So this is a nice, big, chunky piece. And this is all one solid piece. And I haven't quite decided how I want to do the clasps yet, but this necklace goes all the way around. And when I figure out what I want to do, like here's my end pieces, and I will turn that into a clasp at some point, like some sort of loopy hook or something like that. And this one I've hammered just a little bit, and I'll show you a little bit more on how to do that. But you can see how the wire has roundness, but it's hammered in just a few places. Love that shot, guys. Thank you. I'll set this to the side and I'll show you this one. Now this one is in two pieces. That's why you can see it kind of swings. So what I did for this one is I made just a centerpiece and I hammered that and then made a neck wire, just a simple wire that went across the back of my neck. But all the design is in the front, and that just has a hook clasp. So it's very easy to wear and just hooks closed. And as you can see, all these swirls, that's what I was saying. I hammered these on the tips of the round points. So it's like calligraphy. It has narrow lines in the wires and broader, fatter parts of the wires just to give it a unique, interesting look. So this one was with 14 gauge artistic wire. Now this one was a lot of fun. I'll move this over here. So this one is 20 gauge and it just looks like lace. It was so cool to make because what I did with this one, it has 4 individual passes through the entire necklace. Like basically I did that technique that I showed you where I'm just swirling the wire around, but I swirled it around once, went back, swirled it around again, and just kind of connected it to the wire that was there before in a few key places just to get the piece to hold together. Now this one has not been hammered, But instead, because the wire is so thin, I put it on my neck mandrel and just pressed against it to form it into that shape, so it would be something that will conform to your shoulders, your neck, and be a very wearable fluid piece. So this was a lot of fun. So I was saying, taking wire, you can take this and you can try to bend it around your neck. It's a lot easier if you have something like this neck mandrel. This is a stainless steel neck mandrel that you can find on jtv.com, and it is great for forming your necklaces, any type of metal necklace, because it has the shoulder area, it has the back of the neck, and you can hammer on this surface. When you get this, it will come packed in machine oil, and that is to keep it from rusting because it is a stainless steel piece. And you want to make sure after you use it that you wipe off your fingerprints, because the acids in your fingers from your sweat will cause it to rust. So you want to take good care of your tools. So this guy right here, I'll take my 10 gauge necklace, and you can see how it's a little bit bigger than the neck form because I wanted it to fit a larger area and go down a little bit further. But what I can do is I can pull this up and work on this area because I know it's going to cover here, and then push it down and work on the back side. So it's all going to flow together. Now, it's going to get loud. When you have your necklace like this, you want to use something like a rawhide mallet or a nylon mallet, and that is going to push all of your loops down onto the neck mandrel, and that gives you your basic shape. But your rawhide mallet or your nylon mallet is not going to put texture or spread out these loops. So what you need for that is a good chasing hammer or planishing hammer. I'm using the frets hammer today, which is really a beautiful hammer to use. I love this guy. So you can see it has kind of a flatter side, but even so, the edges are rounded over. And it has a round, more of a button round side that's domed, and that's the one I like to use to work on my metal because it doesn't leave the crease, the edge of the hammer marks in the actual piece. So I'll show you what I do. The first thing I want to show you is when I'm using this hammer, I'm holding it by the end of the hammer. It sits in my hand. This is the widest point of the hammer. I've seen a lot of people try to hammer by holding up near the top, and that means that your arm is going to do, your wrist is going to do most of the work. Here, you're bouncing the hammer by the handle in your hand, and so the hammer is doing the work. Very important. Keeps your hand from getting worn out. So you decide where you want your necklace to lay. Like this piece right here I want as my longest point, and I press down and make sure you don't hammer your fingers. Make sure your fingers are out of the way. So I'll flatten it with a few taps, and then to spread that out, I would hammer just a little bit harder. This mandrel can take it. It's awesome. One thing I do want to warn you, try to not hammer where wires cross over each other, because if I were to hammer here, then that would press those two wires together, and that would be a potential breaking point. And after all this work, you don't want to break your necklace in half. So all you do is just decide where you want to flatten out your piece, where you want texture to be, and just hammer away. And you can polish it up after that, and you'll have a beautiful neck piece that I hope you enjoy. And I hope that you enjoy wire and playing with wire as much as I do. I'm Christiane Ross for Jewel School. I hope you enjoy this project. I'd love to see what you make. Please post your designs on Facebook on our Jewel School site, or you can email them to me at jewel.school@jtv.com. I'd love to see what you make.